I'm Lance Lambert. Thank you for tuning in to the Vintage Vehicle Show. We have something very special for you today. We are in Kirkland, Washington at the Suite 200. What is the Suite 200? It's a private collection of incredible cars. Some of these cars are worth well over $1 million. So you're going to get a real treat. You're going to get to see something that's not open to the general public. This is real special. So just kick back, relax, enjoy the show. Here at the Suite 200 in Kirkland, we are fortunate enough to have Peter Hageman, who is the founder of the Suite 200. Is that correct?
That's correct, Lance.
Hold on just a second here. Okay. Sorry. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's something we started 13, 14 years ago. A couple of us car guys were tired of having our cars hidden in the back of the garage under covers, and we thought we'd find up an old warehouse and put the cars in, take the covers off, and it's kind of like a yacht club or any place we can sit here and exaggerate about our cars, get together, have a beer, watch races on television, and have functions. And it's turned out to be quite the place over the years. We've got 30-some members, and we have everything from a Model A to sometimes to $1 million cars in here. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's been, the only rule is you've got to be a car guy, and we all are, and we have a lot of fun here, and it's been a labor of love for us here.
Peter, I don't want to start our interview off on a bad note, but I was a past member of this organization, and never once did you guys invite me to bring my 58 Rambler in here.
Well, I just say stay by the phone, and we'll get that car here very soon, Lance. We have your number.
Yeah, my phone must be out of order.
Yeah, well, the same thing is, don't call us, we'll call you on that
good.
one. Yeah,
I've heard that before. Let's take a look at some of the cars.
Yeah, good.
Peter, this is one of the most striking cars here, but you're going to solve a mystery for me right now. I've heard people call them Talbots and Talbots. Which is it?
It's a Talbot Lago.
Okay,
and yes, the French do sometimes call it Talbot, but there was a different company called Talbot, and even Sunbeam made a car that was called the Sunbeam Talbot, But it's a Talbot Lago, and it was named after Tony Lago. He was maker of the cars. They were rather flamboyant, and as you can see, this is flamboyant. This is a standard factory design. This is a T26 Talbot Lago. It's a post-war car. It's 1948. It belongs to one of our members here, and it's a nice view of how the French did. The French liked flowing lines. They liked simplicity, but a slight edge of flamboyancy. It's a 4.5-liter motor. These are great road cars, and it's a pleasure having this car with us in our collection here too.
Was this car at the time considered a gentleman's hot rod or a sports car, or where did it fall in?
Exactly, Lance. They were considered sort of an upscale sports car.
Mm-hmm.
You see, what had changed after the war is we'd stopped building coach-built cars as much. We were starting to go over to standard-bodied cars, and this is very much in the flavor of the coach build, the custom cars for the wealthy. The grand routiers, they sometimes call it. This has moved away. A little later, we'll show you another car, which I think is the epitome of the grand routier French cars. But these were very much a sporting car, and it's a company that later just faded away, like a lot of companies that just couldn't make it go.
Did the world consider at that time French cars to be good cars or okay cars? Or?
Yeah, I think generally the quality, if you talk about the pre-war cars, the French, of course, had Bugatti, which was a sublime car that died a little after, the company ended a little after in the early 50s. But we had other companies like Delahaye and Delage, which were very high quality. Delahaye later bought up Delage. We had the Talbot Lago. We had Panhard. We had Hotchkiss. We had a lot of good quality French cars. Now we have a few cars left, only in France, as we know, and Renault and Peugeot and a few other things. But we're down to the land great cars. Grand cars are not being made. Although Bugatti is going to be restarted. It's owned by Volkswagen, and they've got a new car coming out, which will be sort of very upscale.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned another car. Let's go take a look at that.
All right, good.
Peter, you made a reference to this car, and what a gorgeous car.
Yeah, this is wonderful, Lance. This is, I think, as good as it gets. This is the Grand Routiers, I call it, the idea of the cars that were used on the great routes of Europe to go to the great hotels by the privileged few. The luggage would be brought with another vehicle. These were high-performance cars. Ettore Bugatti built not just machinery, he put art on the road, not only mechanically. Mechanically, they were sophisticated. This is a 3.3-liter double overhead cam supercharged car that came in supercharged and non-supercharged versions. They were fast, they were comfortable, and they were reliable. They were a good car. It's Jean Bugatti, his son, Ettore's son, who put the art in many ways into the flow of the bodies of the 30s, and he was very much behind that. And this is, I think, a wonderful example. There's not a lot. Type 57C. This car has been to Pebble Beach, but it's also done the Colorado Grand, so it's not just a pretty face.
And the Bugattis are so distinctive from other cars. You can just spot them easily with some of the styling cues that they used.
Yeah. Their radiators have that same famous sort of horseshoe form, and that even the Grand Prix cars have that. Ettore Bugatti very much believed that form is almost more important than function. So everything you do has to have a responsible shape to it. And that's why the consistency of the car is so incredible to see. It has a combination of being feminine and masculine at the same time. The steering wheel is nice and large, but it's very thin. The sound is wonderful. It's very mechanical, like a race car. The racing, in which they did, and they were extremely successful in the 20s and 30s, is what spawned on their production cars, and they were a high-performance machine. There weren't a lot of cars that matched it. I mean, I think in my mind, they and Alfa Romeo in the 30s were king.
Mm-hmm. By today's standards, how are these to drive? Are they a real wrestling match, or are they a comfortable, easy car to drive?
No, they're a good car. They have a good power. They're like any vintage cars. The gearboxes aren't all synchromesh. You need to be a little careful there. But otherwise, this is a very tractable automobile. It's when you get into the 20s, when you have no synchromesh mesh at all, is when you get to more challenging drive. No, this is fairly light to steer. It's a good performance. You can do 70 all day long in it. It's a grand automobile. I mean, it's I think, I was going to call it one of the best kept secrets, but it isn't. I mean, people know how great they are. But if you compare some of the performance levels of these cars compared to just a normal car of the 30s, it's awesome. Mm-hmm. Absolutely awesome.
So Peter, on the Bugatti, that's the you go for a fun ride in that, you drive it yourself. But I can't imagine driving this yourself. You'd have to be driven in this car, correct?
Absolutely. This is a chauffeur-driven automobile, and from those people that had wealth. And it's funny, the difference between the poor and the wealthy was a lot greater then, before the Depression, and these were the cars that those people with money had. This particular car, though, belonged to Vincent Reggio, who later became president of American Tobacco. That's also the reason that it's got this color. But it was, of course, chauffeur-driven. This was built in 1931. This was the end of Rolls Royce at the time, and because of the Depression that killed them. But this was the style they used to use, and this is how they were driven. Open front town car, they call it. The chauffeur was sometimes in the elements. He could get a cover, but most people prefer to keep him in the open. In fact, there are town cars in there that don't have a top at all, and the chauffeur was out in the weather.
You say the end of Rolls Royce in 31.
Well, end of Rolls Royce for America. You see, Rolls Royce was built in Springfield, Massachusetts during the 20s and ended until 1931. They were the same car, with the exception of the coach builders were American. This is a Brewster body. The lights, the wheels are buffalo wire wheels. The lights are Hall American. They're 6 volts. They're center gear change. They're 3-speed instead of 4-speed, but the quality was the same, and the quality of the doors and coachwork is incredible at the time. But that was the end, and the Depression killed them. It took a few years, and it was the end of that. And this was probably as fine an automobile as ever was built.
One of the things that was really distinctive in this car is that door panel. I've never seen anything like that.
Well, Lance, not only the door panel, the woodwork goes all the way into cabinetry. There's a little decanter for wines in there. There's a cigarette holder, cigar holder. The other part of it is, if you find these little initials on the side of the window here, is VR for Vincent Reggio's initials on it in solid gold and diamonds.
So the later model Rolls Royces, the British built, how the transition happened there?
Well, what happened, this was going on at the same time that the Phantom 1, and this is a Phantom 1 Rolls Royce that was called the Phantom at the time until the Phantom 2 came out, was essentially the same chassis. Later what happened, they started just shipping chassis here, and the new P2, which is the car that followed this, and then Brewster would continue to build bodies, but the chassis, they didn't have the money to retool for the American version of the P2.
A car like this obviously took a lot of wealth to own, and takes a lot of wealth to own. But I notice you have a few cars here in the collection that are more of closer to the average Joe can own these cars. Can we take a look at one of those?
Absolutely.
All right. Peter, the first automotive book I can remember reading, and I was in grade school, was called The Red Car. And it was about a guy that runs across an MG, a red MG that's absolutely gorgeous until he walks around and sees one side is totally wiped out, and the whole book is about him rebuilding that car. So this takes me back to that. Tell us about this car.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that. Sort of my first sports car was an little MG TD like this, and I was in high school and absolutely loved it. Really couldn't afford to do the things I need to do. But this is a 1952 MG TD, and the MG, it's very much a MG TD and the TC and the TF. There were three of them. The TC came first, were the post-war car that had a pre-war look. They came out of England. The American servicemen came back from World War II, had driven one of these little sports cars, fell in love with them, and it's essentially these T-Series MGs that brought the European sports car, the British sports car, to our shores. And it's changed how we've looked at automobiles. So this is a great example. What's fun about a car like this, Lance, is that we can... the average man can afford them. I mean, you can find a fixer-upper for $12,000. You can get the best one out there for $25,000. So it's something you can afford. It's a safe place to put your money, and you can have a lot of fun with them.
When these first hit the American shores with the GIs bringing them back, but right after that, am I correct in that they kind of transitioned to sort of your egghead, your college professor, your whatever, the eccentrics were seen driving these, and then they were gradually realized by the general population as being something that was desirable?
Yeah, that whole image, and it was with Porsche too. It was the guys in, that smoking the pipe and the semi-intellectuals and the college students that would have this. It's a similar car to this, which was a TC that was used in Love Story that shows the Harvard student and everything else. So that's very much it. But that did change, and it did change to just general sports cars and stuff. But there was always a difference between a European sports car guy and an American car guy or American hot rod guy or American muscle guy. There was always a difference, and I still think that's there today.
You have a car here that's even more pedestrian that reminds me, it's not the same car as my very first car that I had when I was 14, but it's close. Let's go take a look at that.
All right, let's do that.
When I was 14 years old, it was a different car than this, but very similar. I had a 49 Dodge Business Coupe, and at 14, anything was cool, but I just couldn't get past that trunk. I sold the car because I just couldn't deal with a car with a trunk that was that big. What are we looking at here?
Well, we're looking at a 47 Chrysler New Yorker with a Highlander interior, which is very unusual. There's very few of these made because normally the Business Coupe was put on the smaller chassis, the Plymouths, the Dodges, and the Chevrolets, never on the big 8-cylinder New Yorker. But, one of the big stories on these cars, too, is people like to go to the drive-in movies because they'd put all their buddies in there, get 3 or 4 or 6 guys in there. They'd get in, they wouldn't have to pay, and then they let the guys out when they open the trunk. But this car is has been sort of no man's land in the hobby for a long time. These cars of the 40s. It says a fluid drive transmission. Dad bought my brother and I one of these things to drive around because he figured it was so slow. It was a 6-cylinder DeSoto fluid drive. It's a safe thing for those boys to go out in. And we did, and yes, it was very slow. We were happy to get rid of it.
Well, business coupes, they actually were business. The market they were going after for these were traveling salesmen that filled the back end with whatever they were peddling.
Absolutely, Lance. And what's different about this, in the old days, your salesman didn't want to run it on a panel truck or anything else because that's a blue-collar thing to do, or a delivery man. What he wanted to do, he wanted to be a little more jump. So he wanted the standard car, but he wanted the big trunk, so he put all the salesman samples in there. And that's the reason. But, later we phased out and people used, station wagons and other things like that. But this was the reason of it. And they had a short life, and that's why they have this abnormally large trunk, especially on the big 8-cylinder chassis. This is very unusual.
Some of the viewers are probably wondering if you're going to drop a small block Chev on this and drop it down onto the ground. I don't think so, right?
I'm the wrong guy to talk to about that. I mean, I very much appreciate the great work they're doing, but I'm an historian, and I like the facts. I like the way they were. And if they're slow, that's what they were meant to be, and that's why we should leave them. I think we are custodians. I think with some of these things, like the Bugatti and other cars, I think we have moved past the point of just being car guys and just cars. It's art, and we need to treat it with respect, and we have responsibilities, and we're custodians in the end, and not just the owners.
That's true. Where do you think these cars are going to be in 200 years?
Well, I think it's the automobile is essentially the most important icon, or the most prevalent icon of the 20th century. And it'll have a big role as far as the memory books and stuff, but we don't know. There'll be static displays in museums. You know, there may be certain days on certain roads where you might be allowed to take one of these automobiles. I think it's going to change. I even think in Europe we're seeing, you know, the pressure being put on these cars being used on open roads. So we need to be vigilant on that we can still, you know, enjoy these for a long time. But 200 years is not going to be a real big worry for me.
Yeah.
Or you.
Me either, yeah. There must be one car here that just flips your switch, just the car that you like the best. Which one is that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, and we're going to take you over next door, and we're going to show you a couple of things that are very close to my heart.
Well, let's take a look.
Okay.
Peter, we opened the show with me arriving in a 28 Bentley, not this one, but very similar to this. And so this is the car this is the one that makes your heart pitter-patter.
Well, the Bentleys in general, and the Bentleys made in the 20s. The company started in 1919, produced its first car, Lance, in 1921, had a swan song run till 1931, till the end of the company, but they were an incredible automobile. They started with the 4-cylinder motor, as we have here. It's a 4-cylinder. They started as a 3-liter and later as a 4.5-liter in the 4-cylinder configuration. They're an overhead cam. They're 4 valves per cylinder. They're dual carburation. They're dual magnetos. I mean, they were the state of the art in the 1920s. They won Le Mans 4 times. They were the cat's meow. They were the supercars of their period. And today, these cars are very sought after. They're drivers' automobiles. Personally, this car I have used several times on the Colorado Grand, which is a 1,000-mile tour. I've used it on a West Coast tour down to Monterey, Pebble Beach. They're a great driving car. They're bulletproof, they're reliable, they're handsome, and they're a blast to drive.
The racing history on these, you mentioned the earlier race that it won, but it really was the king of the road at that time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, at the sporting level, at Le Mans and endurance races, they were king. The Bugattis were running the Grand Prix level, which were the single-seaters and stuff, but the open sports cars, Bentley ruled in those days, and they were reliable and they were fast. And they were a neat image. The guys, the so-called Bentley boys, were aristocrats who were naughty playboys who loved to drive their cars fast and with great style. So it's a neat image, it really is.
So that has some appeal to you, being you're a Bentley.
Hey, yes, it's a lot of fun that way. Yeah.
You're considered one of the world's foremost experts on Bentleys. What kind of advice would you give to somebody that's maybe they're in the hobby and they want to get to that point? They want to be a Bentley owner.
Well, you know, there's a lot of ways to go, and the vintage Bentleys are particularly expensive cars. I mean, you're gonna start with over $100,000 for a project car, a 3-liter. So and they go into close to $1 million for a Speed Six, the right Speed Six or an 8-liter, or a blower Bentley, which is a supercharged car. So there's different levels you can enjoy the Bentley hobby. There's a Rolls Royce built Bentley built into the 30s, which is a totally different animal, a very high quality, nice car. And they're more affordable. You can get an old 30 sedan in the $20,000 to $30,000 level, but yes, it's an expensive game to play with, but well worth it. And a very active organization as far as clubs, as supportive parts, and as far as concerning events that they can be used in.
You mentioned a well-built, expensive car. You have a Mercedes over there that looks pretty special. Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, that just came. It was flown in from Europe, believe it or not, for a special tour.
So it was flown in especially to be on the Vintage Vehicle Show, right?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. So Peter, we went from a 28 Bentley, now we have a 28 Mercedes-Benz. That's more of a go out and win the race kind of car. This is more go for a good cruise in the countryside, right?
This is a grand touring car, absolutely, like the Bugatti is in some ways. This was the cat's meow for in Europe at the time. These were the big cars. Bugattis were making smaller cars, and they weren't making the grand tour cars. This is a 6.8-liter, 7-liter supercharged Mercedes-Benz. Fabulous car, open tour, Phaeton. This car is scheduled to go down to Monterey to the Pebble Beach Concourse. It just came here. It was flown on a 747 by the German owner here to Seattle, and then in August here we're going to head down to Monterey, and it's going to be shown on the lawn at Pebble. So not just a trailer queen.
That speaks highly for you that they would ship the car here and entrust you with this.
Well, we get a lot of serious cars here, and we take good care of them, and these are Good people and good cars.
Has it always been considered that one of the top of the line, or early on was it just another car?
Absolutely. Mercedes-Benz has always been special. You know, it's very high quality. There are certain marks that stick out, and in Germany it was the car. You know, Maybach, of course, was a very important car, and in Germany, and Horch was, but Mercedes was king from the very beginning. And as far as race cars, Grand Prix cars, and even post-war sports cars, they were king. Yeah.
When people think of older Mercedes, they think of the insignia, of course, they think of the grills, and on this particular era, the exhaust pipes, they're really distinctive.
Yeah, supercharged car, and it shows the big pipes coming out. They had one version on this called the SSK, which is the cat's meow. It would cost you $7 million today to buy one of those, which were the white race cars of the great German period in the 20s. So, yeah, serious stuff. These ran against, it's kind of fun, these ran against there's a Bentley behind us that ran at Le Mans, and this is the kind of car that in another sporting form that raced against them, supercharged cars. And it was kind of a fun story because the Bentley guys would be instructed to kind of stay on the tail of these Mercedes, so they use their supercharger more than they need to, so they would break down. And it was a tactic that did work.
Now this car, it looks important, it looks proud. It has the British flag on the side and the motorcycle fenders. This is great. What do we have here?
We're looking at a 1929 Speed Six Bentley. Speed Six was the later version of their standard 6.5 liter. This was their hot car. This is the car, essentially what you're seeing today. Very similar car in guise. Won Le Mans in 29 and 30. They were 6.5 liter, overhead cam, 4 valves per cylinder, dual ignition, one being coil, one being magneto, dual carburation. They were a 220 horsepower car. They do 120 miles an hour down the straights. This is the last swan song for racing for Bentley Motors, one of these cars. And these cars get used extensively by members of the Bentley Drivers Club. A lot of these cars were, big old sedans and stuff that got changed to looking like the Le Mans cars, which is the case with this car too. It's called the Le Mans Rep. Yeah.
This is absolutely gorgeous car. This is such an incredible collection that's here at the Sweet 200. Very impressive. And if people want to utilize this facility for parties or whatever, I understand that's available.
Yeah, it's actually been a pretty well-kept secret in many ways, Lance. But yes, there are ways that this facility, pretty much the museum part, not this part as much, are open to small events, and we can be talked to about that. Yeah, it helps support it. We're a nonprofit, and it helps us keep the doors open.
So the future of the Sweet 200 is just keeping the doors open, just keeping great cars?
Yeah, we just want to have good guys and good cars and have a little fun. We're not looking to make any money with the with Sweet 200, and it's a place that we want to share with other people. So yes, by all means, we welcome people that want to come and do events here.
Well, that's great. And if you look at the screen right now, you'll notice there's some contact information for Peter and the Suite 200. You can find out more about the collection, more about the availability of the premises here. And Peter, thank you very much for having us out here today.
Good, great having you.
Very impressive collection, and it's not too late to reconsider having that Rambler out here. I think that would just be the perfect thing here.
Stay by the phone.
Okay.
Stay by the phone.
All right, I will. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Lance.